From meeting room wisdom to bestseller lists, changemakers to chapter ones, this is where expertise meets legacy. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Authors on Mission podcast. So I'm going to set the stage for a little bit here. In ancient Rome, gladiators fought for survival in the arena, but today, entrepreneurs and investors face their own arena, a legal battlefield where one wrong move can cost everything. But just like the Romans had strategies for victory, today's wealth builders have legal structures that have protected assets for over 2,000 years. Our guest, Garrett Sutton, is the modern gladiator trainer, teaching these time-tested strategies through his 35-year legal practice, 11 best-selling books, and on this episode, we're also going to be talking about some writing tips and how we can use legal strategies to protect ourselves and our creative insights. So, without further ado, Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Danielle. Great to be here.
Of course. I'm really looking forward to this. I was researching you right before the podcast and yesterday a bit too, and you just have so much content out there. 11 books and all these YouTube videos too. It's just incredible. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me again. It's great. You know, authors need tips, they need assistance, and so to have a show like yours on, I think, is great because, you know, you have that drive to be an author, but there's certain things you don't know at the start that a show like this can help provide.
Of course. No, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to talk about all those tips pretty soon, but I think it's important that we touch upon you a little bit and your books too. So first things first, you were in law initially for a while, but then you decided to start writing. So what exactly was the catalyst that made you write the first book, and how did it go from 1 to 11?
Well, as a kid, I always wrote, you know, I just had, like in elementary school, there were a group of friends and we did a newsletter for the school. And, you know, I was on the school paper and I just always wrote. For me, it's enjoyment. I like getting up in the morning and writing before I go into work. So it's just something I've always enjoyed doing. And then I practiced corporate law, and I was in the process of starting to write a book on corporate law because, you know, there are not that many great books out there on the topic. And then I became very fortunate to become associated with Robert Kiyosaki and his Rich Dad group. And he was looking for an advisor. They created an advisor group, the Rich Dad Advisors, and he was looking for someone to write a book on the need for corporations and LLCs. And the funny thing, Danielle, is I had already started writing that book. And they wanted it pretty quick, and I got it to them within 2 weeks. So they were pretty amazed by that. So that's this book here, Start Your Own Corporation. And it has been, you know, a solid seller for 20 years. So, you know, these evergreen books, the books that are ongoing in terms of sales, are always good for an author. You want those sales to continue. So then they wanted more books. So I kept writing books for the Rich Dad group, and that's where I got to 11.
Wow, so funny how your experience with the Rich Dad group kind of became the starting point for getting all the writing that you've been doing out there into the world, and really quite the coincidence that you already started dabbling in it. I guess That's kind of the sign that there was a need for Start Your Own Corporation, that it was answering a question that many people had because you already started writing it, other people were demanding it. You know, it kind of just fell onto the plate.
I feel very fortunate for that.
Of course. And kind of to, you know, just to touch upon run your own corporation a little bit more, you know, I was able to look through it a bit based on what the samples on Amazon showed me. And from what I can see, one of the main themes here is that the rich own corporations while others work for them. and of course, tips for changing that. But I'm wondering if you could shine a little light on that. What can the readers expect to gain from Start Your Own Corporation?
Well, part of the rich dad message that Robert Kiyosaki puts forth is that you need to have your money work for you. Everybody's got their 9 to 5 job, but someday you're going to retire and that income goes away. And so during your lifetime, your productive career, you need to acquire assets, start side businesses, so that you can have your money work for you during your lifetime as well as into retirement. And so that's kind of the message: is the rich have corporations, but so should everyone else. And this message of acquiring assets during your lifetime ties in with the need for corporations and LLCs to protect your assets, because we are a very litigious society. People sue all the time, and you don't want to have assets in your individual name, whereby if you get into that horrific car wreck, someone can take those assets from you. So we want to hold assets in the name of, nowadays, primarily LLCs. And so that's what the book is about: using the legal system to protect yourself as you acquire wealth.
Understood. And now that we're talking a bit about the legal system, I think this is a transition then exactly into one of the main points we're hoping to chat about today: the idea that writers need to protect themselves also, and protect their ideas from copyright. I'm wondering if you could shine a light about that, because as a ghostwriter and an editor, I don't usually touch that side of things. So please let us know, what are some tips and tricks that any author should know?
The legal system allows you to protect your intellectual property, your creative work. And for the written word, it's the copyright. And on many books, Danielle, you'll see on the first or second page the C with the circle around it, and it says copyright 2020-25, your name, the author's name. And you can do that without any sort of filing. It just says that I'm claiming these words as mine. You can take an extra step and file with the U.S. Copyright Office, and that gives you even more rights. If someone plagiarizes your work or steals your work, then with the copyright, especially with the registered copyright, you have the ability to go against that person. The other thing you want to protect is a trademark. And so if you have a unique name for your business, you may have a writing service that is very, very well known. You can go to the trademark office and register that name as well. And, there are a lot of marks out there. So you can go to this website that the government has. It's a great website, uspto.gov. And that stands for United States Patent and Trademark Office. And it's very easy to do a trademark search there. So if you have a creative name, you can go look it up and see if anybody else has it. Now, if you're going to be in the category of a consultant, and the name is taken for candles, those are two different uses. So you probably could still get your unique name for consultancy, even though there's someone else out there with the same name in a different class. The other advantage here, Danielle, is that someone could be using your name in a bad way. And if you have the trademark, you can send them a letter to cease and desist, because someone using your same name and they're, a scamster, you don't want that. And so you want to make sure that you continue to protect your name by sending out these cease and desist letters. So having a good trademark attorney on your team can make sense. It's not for everybody, but writers are engaged in the creative activity and of creating intellectual property, and it should be protected. In Hollywood, they're very protective of the intellectual property of a screenplay, of a film. And if you have a book that sells, you should consider using copyrights and trademarks to protect your intellectual property.
Understood. And thank you for sharing that with us. I had no idea that website existed. It's a great resource for authors, especially, where they're coming up with a book idea or the book titles. Have you worked directly with any authors in your experience?
Oh, yeah. And I should mention one thing, Danielle, is that you can't trademark a title.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
you people have titles, the same titles all the time. But if you're going to be selling merchandise based on the title, you have a very strong title, you're going to be selling T-shirts or related merchandise, then you definitely want to get that trademark for your work. I have helped authors before. We set up Wyoming LLCs. That's the best state for this type of purpose. We set up Wyoming LLCs, which are not expensive and offer great protection. And then the author will put the trademark and the copyright in the name of the LLC. So, for example, you get in a car wreck and you owe a lot of money, and someone would like to get at your valuable assets, including your intellectual property. To get at intellectual property through a Wyoming LLC is going to be very difficult. So you have protection there.
Understood. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that for us. I think there's a lot to be learned about this system, and perhaps that's another idea for your 12th book, right? Like some tips and tricks like that. But definitely something to think about. So for all the authors out there, please keep that in mind. We talk a lot about different writing tips on this show. This is a whole other side of it. You need to be protected. So important.
Well, I mean, you're working hard, you're creating great content. Someone can come along and rip it off. So we want to take all steps possible to protect your creativity.
Of course, yeah, just putting up those shields, right? And
Right.
what would you recommend to somebody who, for example, if they do see somebody using their name in a different way, they would go to their website, and what would the first step be in that case, just in case
Well,
anybody
let's
isn't?
say someone's using your name improperly. The first question is, do you have it registered? Do you have the protection? Even if you don't, if you've used it first in your area, you can send a cease and desist letter out if they've come into your area and are doing it. But let's say you've used your consultant name in Michigan and a scoundrel's using the name in Florida. It's harder to get them to cease and desist because you're not operating in Florida.
Right.
However, when you get the national trademark from the USPTO, that gives you rights to the whole country. And so you can send that cease and desist letter out and get the bad guy out of
Bad
confusion
guy.
with your name.
Understood. Okay, well, thank you for that. You hear that? You heard it here, everybody. That's the way to do it. Take note of it. Write down that website name for everybody. And could you just say it one more time for everyone?
Sure, it's uspto.gov. It stands for United States Patent and Trademark Office, and it's really an easy to use website.
Okay, well, perfect. There you have it, everybody. We're going to put a link in the description box of this podcast too, so you can go ahead and, click on it, explore it, get to know it a little bit. Any author should be aware of it. So that being said, I'm wondering if we could transition a little bit into, some of your other books. The Loopholes of Real Estate is another one of your books. What led to the creation of that one?
So Robert Kiyosaki said, I always have to hold up the book. So there's the Loopholes book. So it started out with the idea that people are investing in real estate, but they don't really know some of the whys. First of all, there are huge tax advantages, and some of the downsides, they're legal disadvantages unless you close the loopholes. So the idea was that we were going to write a book for the investor in real estate so that they can understand all the tax deductions and loopholes that you can take advantage of, including depreciation, 1031 exchanges, all that, and so that they understand the liability that's out there. If you have real estate in your individual name, you can be sued and lose everything. So we want to have the title to your rental real estate in the name of an LLC, a limited liability company. And so that is the reason that I wrote that book. And again, Danielle, another evergreen book. It's sold well for the last 20 years. I mean, we're in our fourth or fifth printing.
I love that you mentioned that evergreen. That's something I always talk to my clients about, because something you write about now might not be relevant 5 years from now. And even if it is, you might find yourself throwing references in that could be easily outdated. I had one client who, put in his manuscript, as I'm writing this in September 2004, I'm like, what? You have to rephrase that, make it so that anybody picking it up years down the line can still
Yeah.
relate to it and learn from it. What kind of
Right.
tips do you have in regards to making a content evergreen and selecting the right topic?
Well, for one thing, I try not to put in dates if I don't have to, because it just someone's reading it 5 years later, asks themselves, was this information current? The other thing I do to make it evergreen is, the corporate laws change, the tax laws change. And so I'm constantly updating the book. One of the reasons we've had 4 or 5 printings is the law has changed, and I kind of owe it to my readers to update the book so that the laws are current. But I think as an overall strategy, you don't want to tie down too many dates so that the book should be an evergreen book. I mean, if you're writing a novel, that's one thing. But if you're writing a self-help book or a how-to book, I don't think you want to limit yourself by having too many dates in there.
Exactly. Okay, so avoid those dates. You heard it here, everybody. Yeah, I mean, you can only imagine if you're reading it and then you throw in a date and it's all those years old, it's decreasing credibility, because if someone's going to wonder if this was relevant back then, is it relevant now? Should I keep listening to this person? It goes a long way for sure.
Right. Well, and then, people will look at the very front and they'll see the copyright date, right? And so this one is 2023, but it came out in 2020 and in 2002. And so when a book is on the shelf and the copyright date on the second or third page is 20 years old, that's going to affect their thinking about buying the book. So you have if the book is good, you have to reprint it anyway, right? So why not update it at the time you reprint it?
Right, it's a really good thought. I think a lot of authors don't think about that, the concept of needing to reprint. You think your book's already out there, it's set in stone, there it is. And yeah, I honestly haven't talked to too many authors who have done that, but you've done it for a couple of your books, it sounds like. Is that
A
true?
lot of them,
Much of that.
yeah. Well, it's interesting, and we probably should mention this concept. I have 11 books, but really 4 of them are the best sellers, right? And so, you write that many books, and a couple of them are going to stand out just naturally. And those are the ones I want to make sure are current and up to date in terms of the information and the copyright date.
Of course, yeah, understood. And so there you go. And I guess the process would probably be just reading it through, taking a look to see if anything does need to be updated. Do you have a team of people perhaps who also take a look through it? I know that authors usually think that writing is solitary, but at the end of the day, I firmly believe that is a team effort. So who do you usually go to? Anybody in particular?
I'm solitary. I do it
Okay.
myself. But I'm the lawyer. I know the law, and I really, for the benefit of my readers, I shouldn't be, providing content that hasn't been, handled by a lawyer. Other books, yeah, you get a team going and everything's fine. But I guess I'm more of a solitary on the idea of updating.
Understood. Okay, yeah, so definitely an amazing topic and thought process for us to go through. These are some really cool, topics we usually won't touch upon on the show. So it's very, very important that we're doing it now. Yeah. So kind of going into some other areas here, you actually have been dabbling into some video content. You have a new Tenero YouTube channel. I'm wondering if you'd like to talk about that a little bit. I think it's great because any author, the only way that really spread their reach is to, transform into other industries, other mediums like video. So what inspired that change?
Well, so my main business is called Corporate Direct, and we set up LLCs and corporations for people, writers, real estate investors, business owners. So that's the main focus of my business. These books all relate to Corporate Direct. But at the same time, I've been fortunate to be associated with Robert Kiyosaki. We have traveled the world talking about financial education, and not only in the US, Danielle, but Australia, South America, Europe. All these parents that we came across in these huge events, they all wanted their kids to have financial education. It's kind of a universal thing. And so that was the reason to set up Tenero. Tener is to have, dinero is money. So it's a combination of tener and dinero. And so Tenero Official, that's where it's at on YouTube. We have videos for kids on how to use a checkbook and how to approach savings accounts and things like that. We have a show called The History of Money for Kids. We're also doing interviews for adults. Like there's an interview with Robert Kiyosaki and I speaking about the Rich Dad legacy, because again, his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is the best-selling financial book of all time. It is popular all over the world. And so he's left quite a legacy. And so we were talking about that. So basically, Tenero, the subscription is free. You can go on there. We have content, financial education for kids. We have financial content for adults. And we just launched it a month ago. So, we're gaining subscribers. But, this is something I've always wanted to do. It's kind of a way to give back. And Corporate Direct is sponsoring it. So that's the reason we're doing all this.
Understood. I think it's a very noble cause. Again, something I wouldn't have quite considered, but you are right. I learned a lot of my financial, how to navigate that just by living. But a lot of students, a lot of children going through the school system don't always know about it, which is something we should be changing. But now you have these resources to help parents and, everybody growing up to kind of find that literacy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I need to mention that my son has graduated from law school. He's come into the practice. He's going to take it over someday. But he wrote a book called Greenback's Book of Law that comes out in February. And it's a book, it's told by a dog, that Greenback is a dog who sat in his master's office, who's an attorney. And he tells all about the law for junior high and high schoolers. Because again, they don't teach this information in school. Kids need to know the law. And so we're trying to get content out there that is useful for kids, that parents will appreciate. And I think his Greenback's Book of Law, as told by a golden doodle, will be of use for parents and kids.
That is such a cute idea. I think any book told from an animal's perspective is a unique way to go about it, but it also it will teach people, everybody reading it as well, despite the entertainment factor. So
right,
really cool. And you mentioned you yourself were writing a new book. Is that correct?
Well, the latest book I'm working on is on the founding of ESPN. And so my friend, Bill Rasmussen, he's 93 years old now. He founded ESPN back in the day. And I met him through Rich Dad, and he's just a great guy. And he came out with a book, in 1983 on the founding of ESPN. And we're updating it. We're getting people who were involved in the founding to provide their perspectives. We're adding some information on, kind of the entrepreneurship of it all. At the same time, we're filming a documentary movie on the founding of ESPN, and that's going to come out soon. So that's the latest project I'm working on is the founding of ESPN. It's just a great project.
What inspired that? Why ESPN out of everything? It seems a little bit separate from the other books that you've been.
Yeah, that's a good question. The founding of ESPN is a great entrepreneur story. Bill Rasmussen did not have the money. He was such a good salesman. And you've got to remember, back in 1979, probably before you were born, they didn't have cable news. They didn't have sports on 24/7. You had to watch sports at 11 o'clock at night, and you only got 3 minutes. And so Bill had this vision for nonstop sports, and he was the first one to get it out there. And how he put it together is just a great entrepreneur story. So, of my 11 books, I've written about entrepreneurship and business plans and buying and selling businesses. So this story kind of fits in with the other books that I've written.
Okay, well, hey, I love it. And I guess you're right when you put it into perspective like that, because before there was ESPN, what was there? People just had to watch the TV guide and figure out what time the game was on and be ready for it. Right. But yeah, very cool. So that's something to be very excited about. And you said it's coming out when exactly?
Well, we're working with Hachette. They want it out April 1st. So
Is that a joke? or?
No, they want it at the start of baseball season.
Understood.
Yeah. No, it's not an April Fool's joke. But then at the same time, we're doing the documentary, and it just tells the great story of how they're juggling everything and rushing to get on the air and to be first because other people had the idea after Bill. So, when you're an entrepreneur starting up an ESPN, there's just a lot of things to juggle, and he managed to do it all.
That's incredible. Well, everybody, you heard it here. It's something to look forward to over in April. So, Garrett, if people want to stay up to date, get connected, and be on the lookout for your book, in addition to your son's book, which you said is also coming out, what are the best links for them to head over to after this show's done?
Well, our main link is corporatedirect.com. And we offer a free 15-minute consultation with an incorporating specialist. If you're interested in finding out how you could set up an LLC to protect your intellectual property, we'd be happy to talk to you. So that's Corporate Direct. And then all of my books are on Amazon. And so we have the print book, the Kindle book, and then I always do an audio book. And it seems like those are about half the sales now. And for authors out there, I think you should consider doing an audio book because there are just so many sales in that space right now. I don't know, 10 years ago, they thought audiobooks were going to take over the whole print industry, but it's settled into about 50-50 now.
Yeah, there are statistics. People do like the appeal of a hardcover book, the feeling of the paper in your hands, but we're so busy these days that's probably why audiobooks are useful. People can listen to a book while cleaning, while driving, working out, whatever it might be. So yeah, definitely. Very exciting stuff. We're going to put the links to that in the description box of this podcast today. So if you're listening, head on over to that box and click the links and get in the know, get connected. But overall, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all these insights. Again, very unique content for our listeners, and I think they're going to learn a bunch, and it at least sparked some inspiration for them to go ahead and get their copyrights done, look back at their already published books and think about if it needs updating. These are really important things for us to know about. So thank you so much, Garrett.
Sure, and have them check out Tenero on YouTube. Because we have content coming out every week on financial matters and all, and so we're going to be providing great content, especially for the kids. We have some great kids content because they don't teach it in school, so they got to learn it somehow. So have them go to Tenero and subscribe.
Perfect. You heard it here, everybody. Go ahead and subscribe. All you can do is improve your own financial literacy by doing that. But before we go, Garrett, I'm wondering if you have any last bits of advice for the writers listening today. I mean, you offered some amazing pieces of knowledge, but what's one piece of homework, for example, they can do, aside from heading over to your YouTube channel, that then they go ahead and, get back to their own books? What's something they should learn from you that you would...
Well, I mean, the hardest thing for me was kind of finding my voice, and it took a while. I mean, if you don't feel like you have it, just keep writing. It's just practice, It took me a while. So, just don't give up. If you like the activity of writing, but you're not feeling great about what you've written, just keep going. You'll find your voice.
Understood. There you go. Look for your voice. That's really important too. It's a matter of trial and error in most cases. So you can do that by getting down to it. So thank you again. This has really been a delight. I'm really excited to hear about the other books, and hopefully we can have you back on when it's published. That'd be amazing to chat about that one a little bit more.
That'd be great. Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Well, you heard it here. Have an amazing day. If you've been inspired, I encourage you to pick up the books, check out the Tenero YouTube channel, and remember, as Garrett teaches us, that the wealthy has been using these strategies for centuries. It goes back to the Roman Empire, as his Tenero YouTube channel tells us. So just because they're not a secret, they're just not taught in schools. So educate yourself, get in the know, and just have an amazing day. And until next time, keep building your mission and protecting your assets along the way. We'll see you next time, everybody. As we close another inspiring episode, remember, every best-selling author was once just a person with a story to tell. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, inviting you to write the next chapter of your success story at authorsonmission.com. Your audience is waiting, your wisdom is ready, and your book is next.